The lights were too bright that night. The audience screamed her name, not mine. I stood behind the camera, frozen. The mentor, the man who sculpted her words, trained her smiles, taught her how to hold a gaze long enough to make hearts flutter. She was supposed to win hearts, not break mine. "Who will you choose?" the host asked, and she looked straight into the lens, into me. "I choose myself," she said. The crowd roared. Glitter rained. My world went silent. I should have been proud. After all, she played the perfect arc, the independent heroine who didn't need love to win. But the script she followed, every word, every pause, I wrote it for her. I taught her how to leave someone beautifully. I thought I was training her for the cameras. Turns out, I was teaching her how to leave me. Now, every time her face flashes across the billboards, I wonder if she ever thinks about that night, about the man behind the script, the one she erased for her happy ending. But this isn't where my story ends. It's where hers begins to unravel, because fame doesn't hide guilt forever. And love, once betrayed, has its own way of rewriting endings. The studio smelled like burnt coffee and nerves. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering against the polished floor where dreams either bloomed or died in silence. It was the last round of auditions for Love Stage, the reality show that turned strangers into idols and heartbreak into primetime entertainment. My job was to find the next face the audience would worship, train them, polish them, teach them how to love for the camera, or at least pretend to. I'd been doing it for years. The routine never changed. The smiles never reached their eyes. The words always tasted like metal. That day was supposed to be no different. Until she walked in, 10 minutes late, out of breath, clutching a resume creased from panic and rain. Her name was Mira. She stammered when she said it, voice trembling like a chord struck too soon. Her hair was damp, her mascara smudged from the storm outside. Most contestants came dressed in confidence. She came wrapped in apology. The casting assistant rolled her eyes. Another amateur, another waste of time. But something about her made me look twice. Maybe it was the way her fingers gripped the paper as if it were a lifeline, or the way her gaze never begged. It pleaded, silently, like someone who'd run out of chances. "Miss Mira, you're late," I said, flipping through her form, pretending I wasn't already curious. I'm sorry," she whispered. "The bus? It's fine," I cut her off. "Let's just begin." She stood in the spotlight. Her shadow trembled against the wall, small and uncertain. We asked the usual questions. Why this show? What does love mean to you? Most people answered with scripted hope. She didn't. She said, "I don't know what love means anymore, but I want to find out before I forget how it feels." The room fell silent. Even the assistant stopped typing. Her voice wasn't loud. It cracked halfway through the sentence. But it was real. And in this industry of rehearsed emotions, real was rarer than gold. I should have ended it there. Thanked her, let her go, moved on to the next bright-eyed performer who knew how to cry on cue. But something inside me, something I thought I buried under years of cynicism, stirred awake. I told the others, "She stays." They argued. The producers wanted someone with charisma, followers, stage presence. I wanted honesty. And in Mira, I saw the ghost of something I once believed in, a kind of truth that television could never fake. That night, after everyone left, I stayed back in the dim editing room. The rain outside beat against the windows, steady and soft, like a metronome syncing with my pulse. Mira's audition replayed on the monitor. The tremor in her voice, the flicker of defiance in her eyes. She was raw, untrained, uncertain, but her vulnerability didn't weaken her. It drew you in. I found myself rewriting the show's training script, tailoring scenes to her tone. I told myself it was just good direction. But even then, deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. The kind of line that blurs between creator and subject, mentor and muse. Every word I typed felt too personal. Every scene I imagined had her face in it. 2 days later, the official training began. The contestants filled the rehearsal hall, laughter and perfume hanging heavy in the air. Mira stood at the back, eyes darting like a cornered bird. I walked toward her, clipboard in hand, pretending to be composed. "Do you always stand that far from the light?" I asked. She blinked, unsure if it was a reprimand. "The light's too bright," she murmured. "Get used to it," I said. "In this world, the light never turns off." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then I'll learn how not to flinch." That answer stayed with me longer than it should have. During training, she stumbled, forgot lines, missed cues. But every mistake felt alive. Unpolished, imperfect, human. When others tried too hard, she tried honestly. When others acted in love, she listened to it. Once, during a practice confession scene, she froze mid-line. The other contestant sighed impatiently, but I stepped in. "Why did you stop?" I asked her. She looked up, lost and trembling. "Because I didn't believe what I was saying." I smiled despite myself. "Good. Then make it something you believe." She tried again, and this time the line hit differently. Raw, breathy, trembling with unsaid truth. The entire class went quiet. Later, when everyone left, she lingered by the doorway. "Did I do okay?" she asked softly. "You did more than okay," I said. "You made it real." She looked down, fingers twisting her bracelet. "Then I guess I'll keep trying to be real." And I didn't realize then that real was what would destroy us both. Weeks passed, and Mira transformed. Not in the way the producers wanted, not glamorous, not loud, but there was a quiet magnetism to her now, a steadiness that made even silence feel charged. I started watching her more than I should have, the way she bit her lip before a line, the way her eyes softened when she believed her words, the way she carried the same sadness I once tried to bury with success. Some nights, I'd find her practicing alone in the empty studio. No cameras, no audience, just her reflection in the mirror and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. She would repeat her lines again and again, her voice breaking and rebuilding with each attempt. I'd watch from the hallway, unseen, as if witnessing someone learn how to breathe underwater. And for reasons I couldn't admit, I didn't stop her. One evening, she caught me watching. "Do you always spy on your trainees?" she teased, though her voice shook with uncertainty. "Only the ones who forget to go home," I replied. She laughed, and the sound cracked open something in me, something too fragile to name. We talked after that, about scripts, about fear, about how sometimes pretending to love someone on camera felt easier than doing it in real life. "I've never been in love," she said quietly, tracing patterns on the table. "Then maybe this show will teach you," I said. Her eyes lifted to meet mine. "Or maybe it'll teach me how to fake it better." That silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the hum of the city outside. One night, after everyone left, I found myself staring at the empty stage. The rain was back again, painting the glass in silver streaks. I thought of her, how she'd looked that first day, drenched and trembling, holding on to hope with both hands. I told myself this was professional, that my fascination was simply creative admiration. But the truth was simpler. I was drawn to her because she reminded me of who I used to be. Before fame, before control, before the emptiness that applause could never fill. I opened my laptop and rewrote her dialogue again, softer this time, more intimate. Words that came from somewhere deep, unguarded. When I finished, I realized it wasn't a script anymore. It was a confession in disguise. The next morning, I handed her the revised script. She scanned it, her brow furrowing. "These lines, they feel different," she said, "like someone speaking from their heart." I met her gaze. "Then deliver them like it's yours." For a moment, I thought she'd ask if it was, but she didn't. She just nodded and smiled. That small, unsteady smile that made her look like sunlight trying to break through rain. By the end of the week, she was no longer just another trainee. She was the show's pulse. Everyone saw it. The way the camera found her, the way even silence seemed to bend toward her presence. The producers began whispering about potential winners. I stayed quiet, because somewhere deep down, I already knew how her story would end. Every great character arc begins with pain. Every star is born from destruction. And I had just lit the fuse. The night before filming began, I stayed in the studio long after the crew left. The rain returned, soft but relentless, drumming against the windows like an unfinished melody. I watched her clips again, frame by frame, line by line. Her voice echoed through the empty room, fragile but fearless. She didn't know it yet, but the world was about to fall in love with her. And I already had. Somewhere between rewriting her lines and fixing her posture, she'd rewritten mine, my boundaries, my reason, my calm. I stared at her frozen image on the screen, her eyes locked on the camera. It felt like she was looking straight through me, asking the question neither of us dared to say aloud. What happens when the script becomes real? I didn't have an answer then. All I knew was that the rain kept time with my heartbeat, steady and doomed. And somewhere in that rhythm, the first cracks of my downfall began to form. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, like a secret I was teaching myself to ignore. I turned off the monitor, but her reflection lingered in the glass, faint, trembling, waiting to be seen. That was the moment I realized. I hadn't chosen her for the show. I'd chosen her because somehow she was the story I'd been trying to write all along. And stories like that never end well. There's an art to pretending to fall in love. The camera doesn't want the truth. It wants the illusion of truth. The fluttering breath before a confession, the trembling fingers that stop just short of touch. On Love Stage, I was the sculptor of that illusion, the mentor who taught others how to make millions believe in a feeling they didn't have. But with Mira, the lessons began to feel too real. She arrived every morning before the others, notebook in hand, her hair tied back like a soldier preparing for battle. "Teach me," she'd say, voice soft but certain. And every day, I did. I showed her how to hold eye contact for 3 seconds. Not 2, not 4. The golden space where intimacy blooms before it burns. How to smile as though your heart was opening, even if it wasn't. How to let your voice quiver when you say, "I like you," as though the words were fragile glass that might shatter if held too tightly. She absorbed everything, not like a student, but like a mirror. Every word I gave her, she returned with depth I hadn't expected. Every pause I demonstrated, she repeated until it became her own heartbeat. And soon, the line between rehearsal and reality began to blur. "Don't rush the pause," I told her one afternoon, adjusting her hand placement during a mock confession scene. She looked up, her gaze locking with mine. "Like this?" she whispered, her breath brushing against my wrist. It shouldn't have made my pulse stutter, but it did. "Almost," I managed. "Hold still." I moved closer, guiding her chin slightly upward. Her skin was warm beneath my fingers, soft as the air before rain. The cameras around us were off, but somehow it felt like we were already performing for each other. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she said nothing. Just a small, uncertain smile that felt like both surrender and defense. When she finally stepped back, she laughed. "You make it sound like you've been in love before." I met her eyes. "I have," I said quietly. Then, before I could stop myself, "Right now." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, electric, terrifyingly alive. Neither of us moved. The rain outside pressed against the glass like applause from an unseen audience. She didn't respond, and maybe that was her answer. Because sometimes silence says everything we're too afraid to name. From that day, something changed. She started picking up things I hadn't even taught her. The rhythm of vulnerability, the melody of restraint. When she rehearsed lines with the other contestants, her emotions felt too raw, too personal. The male leads began to falter in her presence, their scripted lines suddenly sounding too hollow beside her truth. And all the while, I watched. Watched the girl I'd built turn into something untouchable. During one rehearsal, she performed a scene where her character had to let go of someone she loved. The tears that fell weren't part of the script. When the assistant director clapped and said, "Perfect," she didn't look up. She only glanced toward me as if asking, "Was that what you wanted?" And I couldn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. Was I teaching her how to act, or teaching myself how to feel again? She began to challenge me too, quietly, fearlessly. "You always tell us how to fall in love," she said one night when the others had gone. "But you never talk about heartbreak." I was reviewing footage, eyes fixed on the glowing screen. "Because heartbreak doesn't sell." "Maybe it should," she whispered. When I turned to her, she was standing by the mirror, her reflection fractured by the studio's dim lights. "Heartbreak is the only thing that ever feels real," she added. And in that moment, she wasn't Mira, the trainee. She was Mira, the truth I couldn't edit out. I should have walked away. I didn't. Our lessons grew longer, more personal. I taught her how to walk into a scene like she was walking into someone's heart, hesitant, curious, alive. How to let her laughter feel unscripted. How to let her eyes hold back stories she'd never tell. She practiced late, sometimes until the janitors began locking the doors. And I stayed too, claiming I needed to observe. But we both knew the truth. I stayed because leaving her alone in that light felt like erasing a part of myself. Once, she asked me, "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" "Every day," I said, "but pretending is safer than feeling." She tilted her head. "Then maybe you've forgotten what real feels like." Her words lingered long after she left that night, echoing through the empty rehearsal hall like a dare. A week later, we filmed her first test scene. It was a simple setup, a rooftop confession under artificial rain. The crew prepared the lights, the wind machines, the water hoses. Everything looked real, even if it wasn't. As the cameras rolled, she stepped forward, her hair drenched, eyes glimmering with heartbreak. Her partner stumbled over his lines, but Mira didn't break character. Instead, she whispered, "You taught me how to fall in love, but you never taught me how to stop." It wasn't in the script. The set went silent. Even the rain machines seemed to hesitate. She looked straight into the lens, into me, and for a moment it felt like the world had narrowed to just us. My throat tightened. She was flawless. Too flawless. When the director finally yelled, "Cut!" I had to look away. She ran to me afterward, breathless, eyes alight. "Did I do well?" I nodded, but my voice failed me. Because what she'd done wasn't acting. It was confession, and I didn't know who it was meant for. That night, I sat alone in my office watching the replay of her scene. Over and over. The water, the tremble, the voice that cracked just enough to feel human. I told myself it was pride, the satisfaction of a teacher seeing his students surpass expectations. But the truth tasted bitter. I'd built her to be irresistible, and I had fallen for my own creation. One evening, after a long shoot, we found ourselves in the elevator together. It was past midnight. The air smelled of rain and exhaustion. She leaned against the mirrored wall, eyes half closed. "You look tired," I said. "So do you," she murmured. "Do you ever rest?" "I can't. Not while you still have things to learn." She smiled faintly. "Then teach me one last thing." "What's that?" She looked up, her reflection overlapping with mine in the mirror. "Teach me what love feels like." The question hit harder than any scripted line. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. When the elevator doors opened, I didn't answer. I just said, "Some things can't be taught." She stepped out first, turning back with a look I couldn't read. "Then maybe I'll teach you someday." The doors closed, and I stood there, watching her disappear through the narrowing gap, a lesson I was already failing to learn. As weeks passed, her growth became undeniable. Producers started calling her the show's diamond. Contestants envied her. Fans online began to notice her even before the premiere. But to me, she was still the girl from that first rainy day, trembling, uncertain, but burning with something I couldn't extinguish. We were teacher and student, mentor and muse. But beneath it all, something unspoken hummed between us. Dangerous, fragile, inevitable. One afternoon, during a quiet rehearsal, she performed a scene where she had to break off an engagement. Her voice cracked halfway through, and for a heartbeat, she dropped character. Her eyes met mine, raw and unguarded. "I don't want to pretend anymore," she whispered, not as her role, but as herself. I froze. "Mira." She shook her head. "Forget it. Let's start over." But the damage was done. That moment, that slip between fiction and truth, haunted me. Because it wasn't just her acting that had become real. It was us. The night before the official filming began, I found her outside the studio, sitting beneath the overhang while rain poured around her. Her umbrella lay closed beside her. She didn't seem to mind getting wet. "You'll catch a cold," I said, stepping closer. She looked up, smiling faintly. "You always say that." I hesitated, then sat beside her. The rain blurred the city lights into watercolor streaks. "Tomorrow's your big day," I said quietly. "You ready?" "I think so." She turned to me. "But it feels strange, like I'm walking into someone else's story." I exhaled slowly. Maybe that's what acting is. Living inside a story until you forget where yours ends. She nodded. "Then promise me one thing." "What?" "When it's over, remind me who I really am." I didn't answer. I just looked at her. The girl who'd learned too quickly, too deeply, too beautifully. The rain fell harder. Her hand brushed mine for a fleeting second. Accidental, deliberate, I'll never know. But the warmth of it stayed long after the night ended. Looking back now, I see it clearly. Love that grows in rehearsal rooms is doomed the moment the lights turn on. Because under those lights, truth becomes performance, and performance becomes truth. She learned everything I had to give. Every trick, every look, every breath. And somewhere in the process, she learned how to make me believe. But as I'd soon find out, the better she became at pretending, the easier it was for her to leave me behind when the real show began. Success looks beautiful on her. That's what everyone said. The producers, the crew, even the camera operators who once rolled their eyes at her trembling beginnings. "Mira's magic," they whispered, like her name alone could summon ratings. "She doesn't act, she feels." And I'd smile, standing in the shadows of the set, pretending I didn't know the truth. That every feeling she performed was one I'd taught her to manufacture. Every flutter of her lashes, every timed hesitation, every half-smile that made the audience lean forward, they were all born from my words, my rhythm, my pulse. I was the ghostwriter of her charm, the invisible architect of her rise. And for a while, I didn't mind being unseen. It started small. The recognition, the applause, the interviews. Mira handled them all with the poise of someone who'd been famous forever. But I saw it. The change. The way her eyes no longer searched for me after a take. The way she began to linger closer to the producers, to the stylists, to the people who could offer her more. I told myself it was normal, natural, growth. But growth, I've learned, often sounds like footsteps walking away. One afternoon, I found her in the dressing room, sitting before a mirror lined with too much light. The reflection of her face was perfect, almost unrecognizable from the girl I'd met at that first audition. "You're early," I said, setting the new script down beside her. She smiled faintly, not looking up. "You told me to stop being late, remember? I also told you not to stop being yourself." That made her pause. She turned toward me, her expression soft but unreadable. "I'm still me," she said. "Just a version people finally notice." Her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. She stood before I could say another word. "I have to go. They want me in the conference room." "They?" I asked. "The producers." She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "They said it's something about my next phase." Next phase. I should have known then what it meant. The meeting happened without me. Of course it did. When I arrived later, the assistant producer handed me a new assignment, a different trainee. "Fresh potential," he said, almost apologetic. "They want you to focus here now. Mira's moving into main cast training." I stared at him. "Without me?" He hesitated, then sighed. "They said she's beyond you now." "Beyond me?" The words fell like a knife wrapped in velvet. I laughed, quietly, bitterly. "Right, of course." He nodded, relieved that I didn't argue. "You made her what she is. You should be proud. Proud." I wanted to tell him that pride doesn't keep you warm when you get replaced by your own creation. That nothing feels colder than realizing the story you wrote no longer has a place for you. That evening, I stayed behind in the empty rehearsal hall. The lights were dim, the mirrors reflecting the ghosts of old performances. I could almost hear her voice, soft, uncertain, from those first days when she'd ask me if she was doing okay. Now, she didn't ask anymore. Her laughter echoed faintly from the next room. When I stepped out to look, I saw her, surrounded by a team of stylists and managers. Her hair was pinned back differently, her clothes no longer simple, her voice more confident. One of the stylists adjusted her neckline. She laughed at something they said. It was effortless, polished, perfect. And then she saw me. For a brief moment, our eyes met. Just a flicker, long enough for me to hope she'd smile, wave, something. But she didn't. She turned away, her attention pulled back to the reflection in the mirror. The stylist tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't look back again. That was the first cut. Clean, quiet, professional. The kind of cut that doesn't bleed until you're alone. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I found myself in the editing room, replaying her latest footage. Scene after scene. The way her eyes glimmered, the way she timed her breaths just right. "She's beyond you now." The words, repeated in my head, cruel in their calmness. I paused on a single frame, her smile during the last take. It was perfect. Too perfect. She no longer needed me. Maybe that's what teaching really is, carving yourself into someone until they no longer carry your shape. I took out my notebook, the one where I'd scribbled her early lines, her breathing exercises, her emotional cues. Every page was marked with notes in red ink. Every page was a piece of me. Without thinking, I tore one out, then another, until the floor was covered with fragments of my handwriting, my lessons, my ghost. When I finally stopped, the rain outside had started. It always rains when something ends. A few days later, I was reassigned. New trainee, new project, same routine. I threw myself into work, pretending not to notice her absence. But every time I walked past the main set, I heard her voice. Rehearsed, 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 echoing through the hallways. Once, during a break, I saw her from across the courtyard. She was standing under a white umbrella, surrounded by the production team. She looked radiant, every bit the rising star the network wanted her to be. I almost called out, almost said her name, but then one of the producers placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the waiting van. And I remembered that she wasn't mine to call anymore. They say heartbreak is loud, full of shouting, tears, closure. But this kind of heartbreak is silent. It lives in glances unreturned, words unsent, and spaces that used to feel full but now echo like abandoned stages. I kept teaching, kept pretending. But every new trainee felt like an echo of her. Every rehearsal a ghost of something I shouldn't have wanted in the first place. One night, a production assistant slipped me a copy of the upcoming press release. "Just thought you'd want to see this," she whispered. The headline read, "Mira Han, the breakout star of Love Stage, a self-made icon." Self-made. I traced the words with my thumb, feeling the paper wrinkle under the pressure. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I folded the article neatly and tucked it into my notebook. Sometimes the only way to survive a cut is to pretend it didn't hurt. A week later, I ran into her in the hallway. It was late. The building was nearly empty. She was dressed for another shoot, glitter on her collarbones, perfume that lingered like memory. When she saw me, she hesitated, just for a second. "Hey," she said softly. I nodded. "Hey." Silence. It wasn't awkward, just distant, like two people standing on opposite sides of a memory. "They said you're working with new talent now," she said, her tone polite, professional. "Yeah," I replied. "You're doing great, though." "Thanks." She smiled, the practiced one she used for interviews, the one that wasn't meant for me anymore. For a moment, her eyes softened. "You know, I still use the techniques you taught me." I smiled faintly. "I can tell." She opened her mouth maybe to say something else, but her manager called her name from down the hall. She turned, waving, and just like that, she was gone again. Her perfume lingered after her. Faint, fading, familiar. That was the last time we spoke before the finale, but I didn't know it then. That quiet hallway farewell, that small smile, that empty acknowledgement. It was the quietest goodbye I'd ever received. The kind that doesn't end in words or closure. Just distance. Just light that once felt warm, now cold through glass. Later that night, I found myself standing outside the studio, watching her billboard light up across the city skyline. Her face smiled down from the screen, glowing, perfect, untouchable. I thought of that first day she walked into the audition room, drenched and trembling, clutching her resume like a prayer. And now, she was a constellation. Far away, brilliant, unreachable. Maybe that's what love is for people like us. A story that teaches, burns, and fades in equal measure. I looked up one last time before the screen went dark for the night, and I whispered into the silence, "Good job, Mira." The wind carried the words away, and for the first time, I didn't chase them. Fame has a sound. It hums through wires and cameras, through the hush before the director yells, "Action." It lives in the clicking of keyboards, in the chorus of fans chanting one name. Mira. Her name. It had become the pulse of the nation. Every headline carried it, every conversation found its way back to her. And me? I lived between edits, trimming her laughter, softening her tone, making sure she looked flawless. I was still there, behind the curtain, unseen. Her story was still written in my language, but now, she spoke it like it belonged to her alone. Weeks passed like that. She rose higher, brighter, unstoppable. And I sank further into the quiet corners of the studio where people like me belonged. Editors, writers, ghosts. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her on the monitors. Her eyes glimmering like wet stars, her smile rehearsed but believable. The audience would gasp. The crew would murmur, "She's unreal." And I'd whisper under my breath, "She's not unreal. She's mine." But no one heard me anymore. Then came the episode. The confession night. It was the turning point, the finale's emotional peak. Mira was supposed to choose one of the contestants to end her journey. It was scripted to feel raw, vulnerable, real, the kind of scene that breaks hearts and builds careers. I wrote every line of that confession scene. I built its rhythm like a heartbeat. Each pause, each silence, each trembling breath, timed perfectly. And she knew it. She knew it was mine. The night before the shoot, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. Mira. I hesitated before answering. I hadn't heard her voice outside of playback in weeks. When I picked up, the silence between us felt heavier than words. Then, softly, she said, "Watch me tomorrow." Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I'll make you proud." Proud, that word again. For a moment, I let myself believe her, that somewhere beneath the polish and distance, the girl I once taught was still there. The one who'd laugh between takes, the one who'd look to me for approval like it mattered. "Always," I said. "I'll be watching." The studio was packed the next evening. Lights burned hot, audience murmurs swelled. It felt like the world was holding its breath. I sat in the back row of the control booth, headphones on, script in hand. My lines, our lines, glowing on the monitor. When Mira walked onto the stage, the entire room shifted. She wasn't a trainee anymore. She was the show itself. Dressed in white, she looked like morning light given form. Delicate, dangerous, impossible to look away from. The director whispered into his mic, "Camera 1, close up on Mira." The red light blinked. Action. She stood there, facing the line of contestants. 3 men, each waiting for her to speak. Her hands trembled. Perfectly, beautifully, just as rehearsed. I could almost hear my own voice in her pauses. The lessons I'd drilled into her. Hold your breath right before the truth. Let your silence say more than your words. She did it flawlessly. And then she began. "Mina," she said, voice soft. "Before I make my choice, I want to be honest." Her tone was vulnerable, eyes glassy. I could feel the crew lean closer, sensing something electric. This show, it's taught me so much about what it means to love, what it means to pretend to love. That line, that was mine. I'd written it weeks ago. She smiled faintly. And I learned it from someone who wasn't supposed to be part of this story. My breath caught. Wait, she wasn't supposed to say that. That person, she continued, looking straight into the camera, taught me how to speak in half smiles, how to hold someone's hand without meaning it, how to look into someone's eyes until they forget who they are. My stomach turned cold. She was quoting me, word for word, lines I'd written in private, lessons from rehearsals that were never meant for anyone else. "Mira," the director muttered. "What is she doing?" But I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. She took a deep breath, her eyes steady. "And tonight, I want to say something to that person." She turned slightly, her gaze cutting through the lens. I swear, for a moment, it felt like she was looking straight at me. "I learned every line you gave me," she whispered, her voice trembling, "but I never learned how to stop feeling them." Silence, the kind that presses against your ribs. The audience was frozen. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking, "for turning your lessons into lies, for making you invisible." The control room erupted, producers shouting, staff fumbling with headsets, "Cut her feed, cut the—" But the director raised a hand. "No, keep rolling." Mira wasn't following the script anymore. She was rewriting it, right there, live. "I can't pick anyone tonight," she said, smiling through tears, "because the only person I ever rehearsed my heart for was never on this stage." The audience gasped. Some cheered, some cried, but I just sat there, numb, shattered, breathless. She had taken everything I'd ever given her, the tone, the pacing, the emotion, and turned it into her weapon, into her confession. And she'd done it beautifully. Too beautifully. The broadcast ended in chaos. Producers argued about damage control. PR teams scrambled to spin her words into artistic improvisation. I just sat in the dark booth, listening to the replay of her voice. I never learned how to stop feeling them. Each time it echoed, it hit differently. Once like a wound, once like an apology, once like love. But love, spoken under studio lights, isn't love at all. It's performance. It's glass trying to mimic water. Hours later, when the building emptied out, I wandered into the empty stage. The confetti still littered the floor. A single spotlight hung over the place where she'd stood. I knelt, brushing my fingers over the marks left by her heels. They looked like small crescents in the dust, like half-moons, like the smiles I'd taught her. My phone buzzed. A message. "Mira, I meant it." 3 words. I stared at them until the screen dimmed. The next morning, the entire country was talking about the confession episode. Clips flooded social media. Her trembling voice, her eyes shining like confession itself. Headlines screamed, "Mira Han breaks script, breaks hearts. A real love story in a fake show." The network decided not to cut the scene. They called it authentic television. Authentic. That's what they called my heartbreak. Days passed. I didn't hear from her again. No calls, no messages. The industry moved fast. They offered her endorsements, magazine covers, dramas. She said yes to everything, except to me. I told myself I understood, that she'd done what she had to, that she'd turned her pain into art. But sometimes, art leaves the artist behind. One evening, I was leaving the studio when I saw a poster. Her face again, larger than life. The tagline read, "Mira Han, the girl who taught the world to feel." I stopped, because once that was my line, and now it belonged to her. The streetlights flickered, rain beginning to fall. I stood there, letting it soak through my jacket, through the last of my restraint. For a moment, I almost smiled, because maybe this was what I'd wanted all along, for her to shine, even if it meant burning myself out of her sky. Later that night, I found the old notebook again, the one filled with her lessons. Half the pages were gone, torn during that first heartbreak. But on the last page, I'd written something I'd forgotten. "One day, she'll stop needing me. That's how I'll know I did my job right." I closed the notebook, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, heavy, cleansing, final. But before I turned off the lights, my phone buzzed again. A new message. No name this time, just a video link. It was her, standing in front of a camera, barefaced, no makeup, no crew. She smiled softly. "Hi," she said. "This isn't for the show, it's for you." She hesitated, then whispered, "You were right. Love that grows in rehearsal rooms always ends under studio lights, but sometimes it leaves a shadow." She looked down, her voice barely audible. "And I still see yours." The video ended. I sat there in the dark, phone glowing in my hand. Outside, the city was alive with her name again. Mira, 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 like a prayer. And for the first time, I didn't envy her, because I finally understood. The lesson had come full circle. She'd learned how to make the world fall in love, and I'd learned how to let go. Still, as the screen faded to black, I whispered into the quiet, "Then keep my shadow, Mira. It was yours from the start." And the night swallowed the words whole, gentle, endless, like the final scene of a story that had already taught both of us too much. Live television has a smell. Hot lights, metal, and adrenaline. It's the scent of perfection burning at the edges, where dreams turn into content. 10 million people were waiting for her answer. 10 million breaths held between commercials and confession. And I was one of them. Invisible again, sitting in the dark corner of the control booth, headset pressed to my ear, heart thudding louder than the sound cues. Mira stood in the center of the stage, radiant beneath the golden spotlights. The set looked like a cathedral of love. Roses, silk curtains, glittering chandeliers. Everything about it screamed happily ever after. But I knew better. Fairy tales filmed under fluorescent lights always end with someone bleeding off camera. The host's voice boomed through the speakers. Tonight, after 12 episodes, countless tears, and endless confessions, the world is waiting for your final choice, Mira. Her name rolled like music, like a promise. Mira smiled. That soft, practiced smile I had designed months ago. the one meant for heartbreak scenes, for moments when love needed to look bittersweet. She tilted her chin just slightly, eyes glistening under the lights. Every movement was poetry I'd written into her body, and in that moment, she was flawless. But something in her expression wavered, a flicker of hesitation, like a memory trying to surface. Behind the monitors, the producer whispered, "Perfect. Stay with her. Camera 2. Don't cut." I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My entire career, my entire heart, was standing on that stage, seconds away from rewriting everything I thought I knew about devotion. The host turned toward her with a smile sharp as glass. "So, Mira." A pause heavy enough to crush a heartbeat. "Who will you choose?" For a moment, she didn't move. Her fingers trembled around the mic. Her breath caught. Even from the booth, I could see it. The faint quiver in her lips, the kind that happens when the script ends and real feelings try to break through. The 3 male contestants waited below her, each with the same perfectly trained anticipation. They smiled, eyes glimmering with nervous hope. The audience leaned forward, a sea of faces glowing under studio light. I leaned closer to the monitor. "Please," I thought, "please don't do it again. Don't turn this into another performance." But Mira's gaze was steady now. She lifted her head, looked past the cameras, past the crowd, as if searching for something beyond all of it. And then she said it. "I choose myself." The silence hit first. Sharp, electric, disbelieving. Then, applause, roars, screams, tears. The studio exploded. Fans shouted her name. The host covered his shock with a laugh, his polished charm slipping for the first time all season. Mira smiled through the chaos. A slow, trembling smile that looked like freedom wrapped in grace. It was the perfect ending, the kind of moment that would go viral before the credits rolled. But I couldn't move, because in that single line, she had undone everything I built. Every lesson, every glance, every whispered rehearsal under dim studio lights, all of it condensed into 3 words that severed us cleanly. I choose myself. In the booth, the producer was already shouting, "She's a genius. The audience loves it. Do you hear them?" I heard them. Their cheers rattled through the walls. But underneath the noise, something else was breaking. Me. The camera zoomed closer to her face. She was crying now. Not fake tears, not glycerin. Real ones. They caught the light, perfect diamonds against her cheeks. I wondered if she knew what she'd done, if she knew she had rewritten the story not just for the audience, but for me, the man who taught her to lie beautifully. And then, for a heartbeat, her eyes shifted. They found me. Through the glare, through the crowd, through every barrier of glass and spotlight, she found me. Our eyes met for just a second. 1 second long enough to remember everything we had been. I saw it there. Regret. Soft. Fleeting. Real. And then, nothing. The moment vanished like smoke. The applause rose higher, drowning the silence. The host embraced her. The contestants smiled politely. Confetti burst in silver and gold rain. Everyone celebrated Mira's choice. But no one saw the man behind the monitors, frozen in his chair, watching his heart turn into television history. When the lights dimmed and the broadcast ended, the crew flooded the stage. She was surrounded. Stylists fixing her hair, assistants crying, cameras flashing. I stood behind the curtain, unseen. Every instinct screamed to go to her, to say something, anything. But what could I say? Congratulations, you've just perfected the art of breaking me in high definition. So I stayed still, watched as she laughed, bowed, and thanked everyone. Everyone except me. Later, after the crowd dispersed, I found her backstage. She stood by the mirror, still in her finale dress. The sequins caught the soft dressing room light like tiny, dying stars. Her reflection saw me before she did. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, We didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, she said, "You were watching." "Yes." My voice cracked around the word. She nodded, looking down. "I thought you would." "Mira." I took a step closer. "Why that line?" She turned to face me. Her makeup was smudged, her lipstick faint, but she had never looked more human. "Because it's the only truth you never taught me," she whispered. For a second, I didn't understand. Then it hit, the cruel, quiet beauty of it. I had taught her everything: how to smile through pain, how to fake confidence, how to make heartbreak cinematic. But I'd never taught her how to choose herself, because I never did. The silence between us thickened. She looked at me, and there was something soft in her eyes. Not love, not apology, something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Then she said, "You made me visible, but I had to learn how to exist without you." I felt the weight of it settle on my chest. "That's how I knew it was time," she continued. "If I didn't walk away now, I'd never stop performing your version of me." Her words were knives wrapped in silk. "Mira," I said, voice trembling, "I wasn't trying to control you. I just wanted you to shine?" She smiled faintly. "You did, and I did. But light doesn't belong to the hand that struck the match." There was no anger in her tone, just truth, and it hurt more than hate ever could. She reached for her bag, slipping off the diamond earrings the network gave her. "You were right, you know," she said softly. "Love that grows in rehearsal rooms ends under studio lights." She walked past me, the faint scent of her perfume, rain and jasmine, trailing behind. I turned as she reached the door. "Mira," I called. She paused. "You said you chose yourself," I said. "Then why did you look at me?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she looked back over her shoulder, eyes shining with something like sorrow. "Because part of me still wanted you to stop me." And then she left. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was absolute. I sank onto the nearest chair, staring at the empty mirror. Her reflection was gone, but her words lingered like ghosts. I thought about all the lessons I'd given her, all the lines I'd written. Maybe this was her final one, written without me. A lesson I needed to learn, that sometimes the people we shape are meant to outgrow us. The next morning, headlines flooded the internet again. Mira Han redefines love. The girl who chose herself. Clips of her final line spread everywhere. Teenagers quoted it. Magazines called it empowering. And I sat in my office watching it on loop. Every time I replayed her words, my heart cracked a little more, but it also understood. I'd trained her to perform emotions, but she'd taught me what it meant to feel them. That night, the studio lights were off. Only one monitor still glowed. Her final frame frozen mid-smile. I reached out and traced her image on the glass, my fingertip trembling. "Goodbye," I whispered, but the word felt too small for what we were. Maybe it wasn't goodbye. Maybe it was cut. A final take, a clean ending. Perfect, just like she learned. Outside, it began to rain. Soft, unhurried drops against the glass, the same rhythm that once marked our rehearsals. I listened to it, letting the sound fill the room until it was all I could hear. And somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, I smiled. Quietly, painfully, because she'd finally learned the one thing I never could: how to love herself without needing applause. And that, I realized, was the most beautiful line I never wrote. The world loved her before I even had the chance to mourn her. Every screen, every timeline, every radio station hummed her name, Mira. The girl who chose herself. The girl who turned a love confession into a revolution. The footage played on endless loop. Her standing beneath those golden studio lights, eyes glistening like dawn breaking after a storm. "I choose myself," she had said, and the crowd erupted like a tidal wave of approval. They called her brave. They called her iconic. No one called me. For the first few nights after the finale, I stayed in the editing room long after everyone left. The air was stale with cold coffee and burned-out ambition. The monitors glowed with scenes I had once directed with precision. Her laughter, her hesitation, her gentle smile before tears. I had sculpted each emotion like a craftsman polishing marble, blind to the fact that the statue would eventually walk away. Now, when I watched her face freeze on screen, I saw none of the girl who had trembled at her first audition. She'd been reborn in the glare of the cameras, polished, flawless, untouchable, and I realized something cruel. The more perfect she became, the less human she was to me. The less I could reach her, the less she could ever come back. The city outside moved like it didn't care. Billboards flashed her face beside perfume ads and talk show schedules. Mira, the woman who chose herself. One tagline read in soft rose gold. I stared up at it from the street one night, my reflection merging with hers in the glass of a storefront. Her smile hovered above me, bright and immortal. Mine was small, tired, and fading. A gust of winter wind passed, carrying the scent of rain and cheap coffee, the kind we used to share between rehearsals. Funny, she used to hate rain, said it felt like the sky was scolding her. Now, it was me the weather was punishing. My apartment was quieter than ever. The walls still echoed with old recordings, test audios, her voice reading practice lines, laughing mid-sentence. Should I tilt my head here? Is this smile too much? Will they believe me if I look down first? Yes, Mira. They believed you. They believed every second of you. I sat by the window and replayed the finale again on my phone, the same clip that had conquered the world. There she was, in that white dress, the hem catching light like an angel mid-ascent, her voice steady, her gaze unshakable. But when the applause broke and the camera pulled back, I paused the frame. Her eyes, just for a heartbeat, found the lens, and beyond it, I knew she was looking at me. I'd been standing right behind the director's monitor that night, half hidden in the dark. That split second, the faint tremor in her expression. I told myself it was regret. I needed it to be. But when I replayed it again, all I saw was perfection. Controlled, unbroken, mine, and yet not mine anymore. The internet turned her into a myth overnight. Articles, edits, fan pages. She's redefining what it means to love yourself. She's the voice of a generation. Each headline was another nail in the coffin of who she used to be. The Mira who forgot her lines, who stayed late to practice her smile until her lips trembled. That Mira had been real. The one the cameras saw now was crafted by me. And yet, I was the only one who couldn't claim her. One morning, the producer sent me a text. "Good work, Tay. You made a star." Just that. No punctuation, no warmth, as if I had built her from code instead of heartbeats. I typed and erased my reply 3 times before settling on nothing. There was nothing to say. The show had ended, but I hadn't learned how to let go of the scene. At night, I dreamed of the rehearsal room, dim lights, script papers scattered across the floor. Mira sitting cross-legged, holding her coffee cup with both hands like it was something holy. "Why do you always look sad after I get a scene right?" she had asked once. "Because," I'd said, "every time you get better, you move a little further away from me." She laughed then, softly. "I won't forget who taught me," she said. But the world is loud, and promises are small. They disappear in applause. I stopped sleeping. Instead, I wrote. Old habits from my training days. Notes, fragments, unfinished letters I'd never send. Dear Mira, you were never supposed to be perfect. You were supposed to be real. Somewhere between the lines and the lenses, we lost that. Or maybe I did. Sometimes I tore the pages after writing them, letting the pieces scatter across the floor like snow. It made the silence look less empty. A week later, I received a package. No name on the return label, just a cream envelope sealed with gold wax. Inside, a photo. It was a still from her final shoot. She was laughing, head tilted slightly, eyes half closed. On the back, written in delicate ink, "You said to always look for something real. I hope one day you find it again. Ia." My chest tightened. Not from hope, but from understanding. It wasn't a love letter. It was closure. And she'd sent it not because she missed me, but because she didn't want to owe me anything anymore. Still, I kept it, pressed it between the pages of my old script. Maybe because some endings deserve to be held, even when they're no longer alive. The studio called me back for another season. New contestants, new faces, same glittering lie. They asked if I'd train another Mira. I told them there's only ever one, but I went anyway. Habit, maybe. The camera doesn't stop rolling just because your heart does. On the first day of filming, I stood by the door as the new hopefuls filed in. One of them, a shy girl with trembling hands, clutched her resume like it was the last thread keeping her together. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, familiar. And for a second I saw Mira again. I almost turned away. Almost. But something inside me whispered, maybe this time I'd teach without creating a ghost. Still, as I opened my notebook, the rain began outside. Sharp, rhythmic, relentless. The same rain that had tapped against the glass the night I first rewrote Mira's lines. The sound of beginnings and of endings. That night I walked home beneath a canopy of silver drizzle. Streetlights blurred against wet asphalt. The city glowed with her name on every billboard. But I didn't look up anymore. Instead, I let the rain wash over me. The kind that doesn't ask for forgiveness, only silence. I thought about her voice, her smile, the way she had once looked at me like I was more than a teacher. And I realized I had never been in love with her. I'd been in love with the idea of being seen. She had just been the mirror that reflected me back. At the intersection, the light turned red. Cars hissed by, their tires slicing puddles into ripples. I caught my reflection in the glass of a bus stop. Half hidden, water dripping from my hair, and behind it, her poster again. Mira, the woman who chose herself. For the first time, I smiled. It didn't hurt, not much anyway. I whispered to no one, "You did it." And maybe, just maybe she heard me, wherever she was. When I reached my building, I paused under the awning and looked back. The rain softened, fading into a mist. I thought of her letter again. I hope one day you find something real. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But tonight, I finally let the past breathe. And as I closed the door behind me, the world outside still shimmered with the echo of applause. Hers, mine, ours, fading finally into quiet. Months had passed, but in this industry, time doesn't move forward. It just circles back under brighter lights. Every season, every face, every new star is just a reflection of the last one. Repainted, repackaged, renamed. I told myself I'd grown used to it, that the echo of applause no longer reached me. But then came the night of the Aurora Awards, the one I swore I wouldn't attend. And of course, that's when I saw her again. The hall shimmered like a cathedral built for fame. Chandeliers spilling light onto sequined gowns, tuxedos, and perfectly timed laughter. The air smelled like perfume and ambition, heavy enough to choke on. I was backstage, clipboard in hand, pretending to check the cue sheets for the next segment. My name wasn't on the list of nominees, not even for direction, but I'd been invited anyway. A quiet nod from the network, perhaps out of guilt. Or habit. And then her name was announced. Best New Personality, Mira Han for Love Stage, Season 5. The sound hit me before her image did. A tidal wave of applause echoing through the hall. I looked up. There she was, Mira, walking down the aisle in a silver gown that seemed to breathe light with every step. Her hair, once dark and plain, now framed her face like falling silk. But her eyes, those were still the same. They held that trembling spark that once begged to be seen. Only now, the tremble was gone. Confidence had taken its place, or maybe armor. She reached the stage, smiled for the cameras. The exact smile I cued. I once taught her to practice for emotional scenes. The slow lift of lips, the controlled exhale, the precise shimmer in her gaze. It was flawless. It was mine. "I'm so honored," she began, voice steady as ocean glass. "This means the world to me. I started as no one, and thanks to everyone who believed in me, I learned to find my voice." The audience melted. The cameras loved her, and I just stood there, holding my clipboard like a shield, feeling the ghost of every word I'd ever written slip through my fingers. When she bowed, the room stood, and in that thunder of applause, I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. After the ceremony, the stage lights dimmed and the crowd spilled into the after-party room. Laughter, champagne, music all swirling together in a blur. I stayed near the shadows, where the flowers wilt and the cables hum. That's when I heard her voice behind me, soft, tentative, almost human again. "Hey." The word was simple, but it cracked the air open like lightning. I turned. She stood there, the trophy in her hand, heavy gold against pale skin. The reflection of the stage lights danced along its surface, glinting like it was mocking me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, small, uncertain. Long time. Her voice wasn't the one from the stage anymore. It was quieter, more careful, like she'd stepped out of her character for the first time in years. I nodded. "Congratulations, you earned it." She looked down, tracing her thumb along the engraved letters of her name. "You taught me everything," she said softly. The sentence hit harder than I expected. Maybe because it was true, maybe because it was a lie. I forced a smile, including how to leave. Her breath caught, just slightly, but I noticed. Her gaze faltered. For the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't have a line ready. That silence. God, it hurt more than anything she could have said. A passing cameraman brushed by, calling her name. "Mira, quick photo?" She turned instinctively, slipping back into her perfect composure, the switch flipping back on. I watched as she lifted her chin, posed, smiled, like nothing had cracked at all. I'd seen this performance before. I'd created this performance. When the flash went off, she looked ethereal. Every angle perfect, every breath deliberate. But when she turned back to me, something in her eyes wavered. "Do you still watch the show?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said. "Old habits die hard." She nodded, then looked past me, toward the hallway where the new producers stood, waiting to escort her to the press room. I wanted to say something more, something honest, something that could break this polite distance we'd both built like glass walls. But every word I thought of felt rehearsed. Fake. Maybe I'd trained myself too well to speak in scripts. Finally, she whispered, "You look tired." I almost laughed. "Yeah, that's what happens when you stop being the story." Her lips parted, a flicker of guilt or memory, I couldn't tell which. "Mira," I started, but before I could finish, her assistant appeared at her shoulder. "Ms. Han, they're ready for your photos." She hesitated, just a breath, then nodded and turned away. As she walked off, her silver gown shimmered like moonlight rippling through water. Each step carried her further, away from the man who built her, away from the ghost of what we were. I should have called after her. I should have said something reckless. But the moment had already chosen its ending. Later, when the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed to a soft amber, I found myself standing alone on the empty stage. The same stage where she had just accepted her award. I ran my hand over the spot where she had stood, where her heels had clicked against the wood, where the echoes of her voice still lingered. The scent of her perfume hung faintly in the air, jasmine and rain. It reminded me of that first night she'd auditioned, trembling, drenched, clutching her resume like salvation. Back then, she'd looked at me like I was the answer. Now, she didn't need questions anymore. I sat on the edge of the stage, the audience seats stretching before me like a silent ocean. Every chair empty but still heavy with echoes of applause. I thought of the words she'd said. "You taught me everything." Did I? Or did I just teach her how to perform? How to survive in a world that feeds on emotion but never gives it back? Maybe that was the cruelest lesson of all. As the crew packed up cables and rolled away the set pieces, I noticed something on the floor. A small slip of paper folded twice. Probably fallen from her bag, or maybe a note someone had given her. I picked it up, hesitating before opening it. Inside, in rushed handwriting, "For tomorrow's interview, remember, pause before you say his name. It makes you look like you still care." My chest tightened. Even now, her emotions were scripted. Even now, someone else was teaching her how to feel. I folded the note back carefully and set it on the stage floor. Then I walked away. Outside, the night was cold, too clean, too bright. Neon lights bled across wet pavement, painting the world in electric blues and golds. Somewhere far off, fireworks cracked the sky, probably a celebration for the award show's finale. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking. The rain began again, soft at first, then steadier. It soaked into my sleeves, my hair, my lungs. There was something poetic about it, the sky crying for both of us because neither of us could anymore. As I crossed the street, I caught sight of a massive digital billboard above the plaza. It flickered with her face, that same award night smile, frozen mid-laughter. The tagline glowed beneath, "Mira Han, the woman who chose herself." For a moment I stood there under the rain, staring up at her. The city buzzed around me. Cars, music, strangers with umbrellas. No one knew that somewhere beneath the makeup and medals there was a ghost of a girl who once cried during rehearsal because she couldn't find the right words for love. And a man who taught her what love looked like, just enough for her to perform it. The billboard flickered once, the lights glitching from silver to red. For half a second, her face blurred, distorted by rain, by static, by memory. And in that blur, I saw her again, the real Mira, the one who used to bite her lip when she got nervous, the one who looked at me with more trust than I deserved, the one who hadn't yet learned how to leave. Then the screen cleared, and she was gone. I took a deep breath and turned away. My reflection followed me in the puddles, warped, stretched, half a man. Maybe that is what I had become, the leftover shadow of someone else as a success. But as I reached the corner, I glanced back one last time, and though I couldn't explain it, I swore the billboard's eyes, her eyes, looked down at me again, soft, apologetic, almost human. I blinked and it was gone. The rain fell harder. The world moved on. And in the quiet that followed, I finally understood. It wasn't her silence that hurt the most. It was the fact that, for once, it was real. A week passed. Not 7 days, but 7 slow collapses of silence. Each morning felt like walking barefoot across the shards of a dream I'd already watched die. The show had ended. The applause had faded. The trending hashtags bled into newer scandals and brighter stars. And I became what this world always turns you into when your story's done. A footnote. But then, one morning, when the sky hung low and gray like an exhausted sigh, a letter arrived. No courier, no printed address. Just a plain white envelope slipped under my door, damp from the drizzle outside. My name, written in her handwriting. The kind that curved with hesitation, as if every letter was afraid to be misunderstood. It had been months since I'd seen that handwriting. Back when she used to leave notes on the rehearsal desk. Do I smile here? Does this look real? Now she didn't need me to tell her what looked real anymore. I held the envelope for a long time before opening it. The rain tapped softly against the window again. the same rhythm that had once scored our first night working together. It sounded like memory. It sounded like closure. Inside, there was no signature. Just 3 pages, folded with careful precision, like she wanted the paper itself to behave. I didn't reject you. I rejected the version of me you wanted me to be. That was the first line, sharp, honest, almost cruel, but beneath it, truth hummed like the quietest kind of mercy. I sank into my chair, the one by the window I'd written all her dialogue from. The ink on the page had bled slightly, like even the paper had cried before it reached me. You taught me how to look at someone and make them believe they were the only one in the room. But you never taught me how to feel that way for real. I read those lines again, and again. My chest felt heavy, but not with anger, with the kind of ache that comes when you realize someone finally saw you, too clearly, too late. Maybe she was right. I'd taught her everything except how to love outside the script. Because even my love had lines, rehearsals, marks on the floor where she was supposed to stand. You once said I had something raw, something real, but every time I showed you who I was, you polished it away. Until one day, I looked in the mirror and saw you. Not me. The words sank deep, slow as rain into soil. I remembered the way she used to fumble through lines, stuttering over emotions too big for words. And me, too eager, too proud, shaping her voice until it matched the rhythm I thought love should sound like. I told myself I was helping her. But maybe I was just sculpting her into someone I could love without fear. Because loving the real version of her, the one who could defy, who could walk away, that would have terrified me. I read the last page. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, when I said I'd choose myself, it wasn't a rejection of you. It was a rejection of who I had to be to earn your approval. I hope someday you stop watching me through a camera and start seeing yourself without the lens. The ink trailed off after that. No closing, no signature, just space, the kind of silence that doesn't demand a reply. I sat there, letting the rain fill the quiet. Outside, the city hummed with its usual indifference. People hurrying, cars splashing through puddles, lights flickering against the gray sky. And me, a man holding a letter that dismantled everything I thought I'd built. But beneath the sting, there was peace, the kind that comes after the final scene, when the credits roll and the lights come up. The kind that whispers, "It's over, and that's okay." I thought about burning it, not out of spite, but as a ritual. Because every story needs an ending, even the ones you write with your heart. So I stood by the window, struck a match, and watched the flame tremble to life. The fire caught fast, licking the edges of the paper, curling the words she'd written until they turned into a soft, orange glow. For a moment, her sentences shimmered in the light. I didn't reject you. I rejected the version of me you wanted me to be. Then, one by one, they vanished. The smell of smoke filled the room, mingling with the scent of rain. Outside, the downpour grew heavier, as if the sky itself was trying to wash the moment clean. I opened the window, letting the wind pull the ashes into the night. They rose like fragments of memory. Each one a lesson, a regret, a goodbye. Somewhere in that gray swirl, I thought I saw her. Not the woman from the screen, not the girl from the audition, but something in between, the real Mira. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to chase her. I walked back to my desk, the empty space where the letter had been now marked by a faint ring of ash. The rain had soaked the curtains, the floor, the edges of my notebooks. Ink ran down the margins of old scripts, like the past trying to dissolve itself. I didn't stop it. I let it all fade. Because maybe that was the only way to let her go, not by keeping what she wrote, but by understanding what she meant. Later that night, I stepped outside. The streets glistened under the lamplight, each puddle a mirror reflecting broken pieces of the world above. I walked until my shoes filled with water, until my thoughts quieted. Somewhere in the distance, a bus drove past carrying a new poster. Her face again, smiling for a new show. Different title, same light. But this time, I didn't flinch. Because that wasn't my story anymore. It was hers, entirely hers. I found a cafe still open near the end of the block, the kind with fogged-up windows and a single tired barista behind the counter. I ordered black coffee, no sugar. When he asked for my name for the cup, I almost said Director Park, out of habit. But I stopped. Just Han, I said. The name felt strange, unfamiliar but clean. I took the coffee to the corner table by the window. Outside, the rain had softened into mist, wrapping the streetlights in halos. I sipped slowly, feeling the warmth bleed through my chest, grounding me in something simple, something real. I thought of her last words. I hope someday you stop watching me through a camera. She was right. I'd lived too long behind glass, seeing the world as scenes to direct, people as stories to polish. Maybe it was time to live unscripted. Maybe closure wasn't silence. Maybe it was choosing to keep living without needing a sequel. When I stepped out of the cafe, dawn had begun to color the sky, a faint gold bleeding through the gray. The city, washed clean, smelled of wet earth and beginnings. I paused at the corner where the rainwater pooled in the cracks of the pavement. For a moment, I thought about how it all began. Her trembling voice at the audition, my hand guiding hers, the rain tapping the window. It had started with rain, and now it was ending the same way. Symmetry, poetic justice, or maybe just peace. I took one last look at the sky, whispered a quiet thank you, not to her but to the storm that made both of us real. Then I walked on, the sound of the city waking up around me, the ashes of her words drifting somewhere far behind. And as I turned the corner, I realized, for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing a story. I was finally free enough to live one. It began the way most of my stories do, with silence. Not the kind that begs for music, but the kind that hums through an empty room after too many nights spent rewriting memories. Months had passed since her letter. The ink had dried, the ashes had faded into the soil beneath my balcony. But her words, they refused to die. I didn't reject you. I rejected the version of me you wanted me to be. That sentence haunted me more gently than pain should, like a wound that had learned to stop bleeding, but not to forget the knife. The studio lights felt colder when I returned. Every stage looked the same, the wooden floors polished to perfection, the air carrying the faint smell of coffee and anxiety. But this time, I wasn't writing someone else's fairy tale. I was writing my own. A story about heartbreak without filters or cues, about the love that doesn't make it to the final edit. The network executives blinked when I pitched it. No romance arc? No redemption twist? I smiled. Only truth. They hesitated, then nodded. Maybe they sensed something in my voice, that quiet conviction only those who've been broken can carry. The first draft poured out of me like rain breaking a drought. Every line was a confession disguised as dialogue. Every scene was a scar trying to explain itself. The script followed a man, a writer, of course, who trains a woman to perform love for television, only to realize he's fallen for the version of her he helped create. A mirror of my own downfall painted in soft tragedy. In one scene, he tells her, "You were never my muse. You were my reflection, learning to breathe." And when I wrote that line, I stopped. My hand trembled, because I wasn't sure if I had written it for her or for me. Filming began in early winter. The air outside smelled of snow that hadn't arrived yet. The actors moved through the scenes with an ache I couldn't describe, as if they knew this story wasn't just fiction. During takes, I'd catch glimpses of her in the actress's posture, in the tilt of her head, in the half-smile that once belonged only to Mira. It was terrifying. How memory seeps into art, how ghosts learn to act. Once, between shots, the lead actress turned to me and asked, "Did this really happen?" I hesitated, then said, "Only in all the ways that matter." She nodded, her eyes soft. "Then it'll feel real." And it did. Too real. Every night I'd stay late in the editing suite, replaying fragments of scenes. A close-up of her laughter. A tear she refused to let fall. A line whispered so quietly it felt stolen. The hum of the editing machine became my lullaby. There was a strange peace in crafting pain, as if shaping it into story made it less cruel, less personal. Yet sometimes when the studio lights dimmed and the world outside went silent, I'd find myself whispering to the screen, "Did you watch this, Mira? Did you see what you left behind?" Of course, there was no answer. Only the soft flicker of light against my face reflecting a version of her I could finally control. When the show aired, no one expected it to succeed. No pop idols, no glossy romance, no grand declarations. Just raw, human ache. But it resonated. People called it honest, quietly devastating, a mirror to modern love. Viewers wrote messages saying it felt like someone had written their own heartbreak into words. For the first time, my name trended, not hers. And yet, the victory felt hollow, like applause echoing through an empty theater. Still, I smiled when the producer asked in an interview, "Who inspired this story?" I answered simply, "A woman who taught me that love isn't something you train for." A week after the finale aired, I went for a walk through the city. It was raining again, the same soft drizzle that used to tap at my window the night I burned her letter. The streets glowed with reflections of neon lights, bending and blurring like old memories. I passed by a billboard showing her face, a perfume advertisement this time. She was still radiant, still untouchable, but I didn't feel the sting I used to, just a distant warmth, like looking at a painting you once cried in front of and realizing the colors have changed. In the cafe across the street, a television was playing my show. The final scene, the one where the writer lets go of his muse under falling rain. I stopped and watched from the sidewalk. The actor whispered the line I had written months ago. "You don't need to come back. Just don't forget that once I believed in you." The cafe patrons clapped quietly. Some wiped tears. And in that moment, I understood. Maybe closure isn't a door slamming shut. Maybe it's just the sound of applause from strangers who will never know what it cost you to write those lines. That night, I returned home and found something waiting at my door. A small white envelope. No name, no address. Just my handwriting, written in blue ink. Inside, a single sheet of paper. No words. Only a pressed camellia flower. The same kind that bloomed outside the rehearsal hall where we first met. I stared at it for a long time. The petals were fragile, almost translucent, as if they'd survived too much sunlight and not enough care. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. It wasn't forgiveness or apology. It was acknowledgement. A quiet nod across the distance we'd built. I placed it on my desk, next to the script, and whispered, "Thank you." The flower said nothing, but somehow I heard her voice anyway. Weeks later, when the network renewed the show for a second season, they asked if I'd like to make it a love story this time. Something hopeful, something that ends with two people finding their way back. I thought about it, about all the versions of love I'd written, rehearsed, performed, broken, burned. Then I said, no, let's make it about healing. Because love, I realized, isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about walking away with grace, about learning to love the silence that follows the last line. And maybe, somewhere out there, she watched the credits roll and smiled. Not as the girl I trained to act, but as the woman she fought to become. Maybe she saw the camellia on the writer ES desk in the final shot, a tiny detail I had added just for her, and knew it meant peace. Because in the end, it wasn't about who loved whom first. It was about who learned to let go without bitterness. The rain stopped sometime after midnight. Yes. The rain stopped sometime after midnight. I stepped out onto the balcony, the city lights shimmering like old confessions, and breathed in the scent of wet pavement and possibility. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It felt earned. I picked up my pen and opened a new notebook. Not for another script, not for her, but for me. The first line came easily. Every love story ends twice. Once on the screen and once in the heart. And with that, I began again. Not as her teacher, not as her ghost, but as someone who finally learned the difference between creation and connection. The camera of my mind faded to black, the sound of rain becoming applause. It was one of those afternoons where time felt slow enough to be kind. The city was quieter than usual, dressed in the pale gold of late autumn. The leaves along the boulevard moved like faded applause, soft, brief, gone before you could thank them. I sat by the window of a small coffee shop tucked between an old bookstore and a florist. My notebook was open, pages already bruised with ink. The story I was working on wasn't about her, not directly, but every character I wrote still spoke in the rhythm of her breath. Outside, the sky hung low and gentle, the color of forgotten letters. I liked it that way, subdued, unassuming, like a heart finally learning to beat without noise. I was halfway through a sentence, the kind that ends before it can promise anything, when a voice drifted over my shoulder. "You still write endings that hurt." I froze. That voice, I'd carried it in memory, in dreams, in the cracks between scripts. It sounded exactly as I remembered, soft but certain, like a melody that never needed an instrument. I turned slowly, and there she was. No cameras this time, no stylists, no flash, no false spotlight. Just her, hair tied loosely, a wool coat draped over her shoulders, holding a cup of coffee that steamed faintly between her fingers. Mira. For a moment, the world felt unedited. The air trembled with all the things we never got to say. She looked older, not by years, but by silence. The kind of maturity that only loss can sculpt. But her eyes, they still carried that same unguarded gleam, like she could still turn any room into a stage. "Do you mind if I sit?" she asked. I nodded before my voice remembered how to exist. "Please." She sat across from me, careful, as if afraid the table might remember the distance we once shared. The cafe played a quiet jazz tune, a lazy trumpet over the hum of espresso machines. Between us, the air felt both too heavy and too fragile to touch. Her hands trembled slightly when she set her cup down. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was the past. "So," she began, her voice testing the air between us, "you still write about heartbreak?" "Maybe," I said, managing a small smile. "But at least now, I write it for myself." She blinked, then laughed softly. That same sound I used to chase through empty rehearsal rooms. It wasn't the rehearsed laugh I'd taught her for camera cues. This one was smaller, more human. It caught me off guard. "Good," she said. "You used to write for everyone but you." I tilted my head. "And you used to perform for everyone but yourself." Her smile faded, not in offense but in understanding. "I guess we both learned," she said. Outside, a wind stirred. The leaves danced past the window like torn script pages, scattering into nowhere. "Congratulations on the show," she said. "I watched every episode." "You did?" "I did. It felt like you were talking to me the whole time." I hesitated. Maybe I was. Her eyes flickered, soft and unreadable. "Then I'm sorry for being a hard story to end." I looked down at my notebook, the open page, the half-finished line that no longer mattered. "Some stories aren't meant to end," I said. "They just stop hurting." We sat in silence for a while. Not awkward, just real. The kind that sits between two people who've already said everything that could ruin them. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger, as if drawing circles around memories neither of us could name aloud. Then, quietly, "Do you hate me?" The question landed like a drop of rain on still water, small but deep. I shook my head. No, I used to. But hate needs energy. I ran out of that somewhere along the way. Her eyes softened, glistening under the cafe light. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," I said, "but wanting doesn't change what happens. That's the thing about stories. They keep their own rhythm, no matter how much we try to rewrite them." For a moment, she looked away, watching a couple outside share an umbrella as the first drizzle began. She smiled faintly. "Do you remember what you used to say about rain?" I chuckled. "That it hides the sound of crying?" She nodded. "I used to think that was so tragic. And now? Now I think it's honest." We both laughed, quietly, like the past was listening. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message, a name I didn't ask about. She silenced it. "It's strange," she said, voice low. "Back then, I thought freedom meant not needing anyone. But now..." She paused. "Now I think it just means forgiving yourself for needing the wrong person once." That one sentence felt like a mirror held to both of us, and suddenly, all the years of ache, the silences, the distance, they didn't feel wasted. They felt necessary. I leaned back in my chair, watching her. Not as the girl who broke my heart, but as the woman who taught me how to live with it. "Do you still write about me?" she asked, teasing lightly. I smiled. "Not anymore." "Liar." "Okay," I admitted. "Sometimes, but not you exactly. Just the idea of you, the version that lives in words, not the one sitting across from me." She nodded thoughtfully. "Then I guess we're both ghosts in each other's stories." "Maybe," I said, "but some ghosts deserve a peaceful ending." The rain outside had thickened, tracing silver lines down the glass. Inside, the light grew warm and dim. That golden hour of afternoon where everything looks softer, even regret. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine for just a moment. It wasn't a gesture of love. It was something quieter. Forgiveness, maybe. Recognition. "I'm glad you're okay," she said. "So am I." "Do you ever miss it? The show, the rehearsals, the chaos?" I thought about it. The lights, the scripts, the breathless rehearsals that blurred into something more dangerous. "Sometimes," I said, "but not enough to go back." "Good," she smiled, "because I think I'd fall for you again, and I'm not ready to make that mistake twice." We both laughed, and for the first time it didn't hurt. It just existed, like a photograph finally fading without bitterness. A small bell above the cafe door rang as a new customer entered, bringing with them a gust of cold wind. She glanced at her watch. "I should go," she said softly. "I have a flight tonight." "Another award?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, just a break." She stood, smoothing her coat, and for a heartbeat she looked exactly as she had the day we met. Nervous, bright, full of something unnamed. At the door, she turned back. "You know," she said, "I thought our story would end in flames or silence, but this..." She looked around the cafe. The rain, the books, the warmth. "This is better." I nodded. Sometimes the cruelest betrayals birth the truest art. She tilted her head. "And sometimes?" "Sometimes," I said, "letting go is the finale." She smiled, small, genuine, human. And then she left. Through the window, I watched her umbrella open into the rain, a dark bloom against the silver afternoon. She walked away without looking back, and I didn't need her to, because for the first time, there was nothing left unsaid. I closed my notebook. On the last page, where I'd once written a line about heartbreak, I crossed it out and wrote something new. Endings aren't punishments. They're just places where the truth finally breathes. I watched the ink settle, the letters sinking into paper like calm waves. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. The world felt washed clean. I ordered another coffee, opened a fresh page, and began to write again. Not about her, not about us, but about something kinder. A story without villains or saviors. Just two people who once shared a script and learned in the end to improvise. The pen moved easily this time, steady and sure. And somewhere in the city, maybe under the same gray sky, I hoped she was writing too. Different stories, same piece.